We'd been on the run for 2 days. It's deep. A small velvet lake of blood festered at the top of his right shoulder, fresh and pulsing. It's really deep. All right. I could tell that he was angry. I made us stop. His feet shifted on the forest floor, anxious to break back out into a run. I'll live. Abel was a big man. Like all of us, he had been bald, but his time away had allowed him to develop a short, tough stubble across the top of his square head. I'd never seen that before until meeting him. I'm not so sure. My hands were still shaking as I tried to diagnose the severity of his wound. All of the running, all of the fighting. Well, all of the me watching Abel fight. It was brutalizing. Enough. He stood up and almost knocked me over. My small frame was nothing against him. I can hear them. They still don't know what you are. We can't risk it. I didn't want to admit it, but I heard them too. The forest held a distinct sanguine presence when they were close. My heart rate always noticed before I did. Hey. I laid my hand on his arm, noticing his posture. You can't fight right now. His hand was wrapped tightly around a makeshift spear. That's too bad. Then in a jolt he grabbed my shoulder and shoved me forward, forcing me into another desperate sprint, and following quickly behind. I was 17, and gaunt from my life of slavery, barely able to keep up a decent pace. Yet in an instant we went from giving our muscles their much-needed rest, to hearing the whistle of wind blown by our ears. I yelled backwards as I struggled to find a good pattern with my feet. How far? The panic had already started to boil inside of me. Hot tears were ready to wash over my face, and my jaw tightened into an awful sinew of stone. Too close to risk. I knew what he meant. If we slipped into the hideout when they were on our trail, then we'd risk everything. I was told I was important, but I was happy to hear that I wasn't that important. Let's make a loop. I couldn't stand the thought. We barely made it for our first confrontation. Another one would be our doom. We'll lose them, then come back. Too slow. His gravel voice cut through all of my baseless hope. They're fresh. I grimaced as I shook my head, feeling my tears blow back against the wind. Then run faster, damn it! He grabbed the back of my shirt and pulled me into a stop, both of us skidding atop the soil as we turned. This isn't right. I looked around in confusion. Why did we stop? They're still far away. Come on, we can do this. No. Listen. I don't... My brows furrowed. Gone. He nodded and looked around. The sound is gone. What? What does that mean? Abel focused. I could see that his brain was working overtime to connect the dots, and like he'd constantly proven to me over the last 2 days, he rarely missed the mark. It means we're being played. I don't understand. He straightened up, relaxing his shoulders and bringing his feet together. All right, he yelled out, not talking to me. All right, I should have noticed before. There was no way I should have survived that last fight. After a chilling moment of silence, 2 of the beasts appeared from the shadowed undergrowth. They were grotesque chimeras of hound and science, genetically evolved to be both massive and fast. Their teeth jutted out in jagged rows, a measured feature chosen to instill terror. They instinctually shook their gangly, pink-skinned faces, foam coming from their mouths and barking gargled snarls. Breath drained from me as an overseer came out in between them. I'd never been allowed to see one in person, only videos. It was tall, probably 12 feet and as thin as me. His legs were almost uncountable, and moved with some sort of perverse grace. And while swaying its whole body, it extended its expansive arms and revelled in the air. Clever as always. That voice. It came from his tall, oval and eye-coloured head. It almost looked like a plant seed. Black dots scattered and packed across its shape, and there was no mouth in sight. It spoke from inside of its head. I knew I shouldn't have let them get too close. I was frozen in place. Every bleeding inch of my nerves shriveled into themselves. Every muscle knotted into angst-filled balls of adrenaline and stupor-inducing fear. I couldn't even shake. I was locked in, minuscule under the awful aura of superiority and dread that the Overseer instilled. Abel shot a quick and nearly inaudible whisper to me. Lean into it. What? He cut me off and stepped closer to it. You shouldn't have come this close either. Somehow, he wasn't drenched in paralyzing fear, and with a huff and an angry scream, he wrenched back his spear, taking a brave and quick step forward, ready to launch it straight into the string of alien flesh. But he stopped halfway into his swing. In an instant, he became a statue, perfect and still, a picture of movement halted. I could feel it just as well as he could. Psionics. Cute. The Overseer moved up to him, its sea of legs snaking over one another, until it was staring down at his pitifully immobile figure. It's a shame your bravery never amounted to actual talent. I was about 10 feet back now, being deafened by the intensity of his force. We were so close to being able to avoid this. His arrogance was palpable, trumped only by his actual power. Abel produced a strained whisper through his gritted teeth. Fuck you. The Overseer didn't even take a moment to notice me. It brought one of its elongated hands up into the air before his face, turning it and seemingly analyzing it. You know, it doesn't matter what you think now. How curious to do all of this for a young slave. It brought the hand down to his forehead, producing a slight glow against his grimacing face. You have all that I need right here. Abel began to scream. It was a horrid, twisting scream, a yell produced by simple carnal agony. It pulsed and ebbed, coming up and down with the energy of his torture. It was so brutal that the air itself became drenched with pain, and I fell into the dirt and began to writhe as I saw Abel suffer, feeling it with him. Tough to crack, the Overseer said simply. That's okay. The world became red and loud. Everywhere I looked I saw the pain. Every single breath I drew, every sound I heard. It was atoms of the Overseer's awful psionic powers. I balled up, incapable of comprehending, unable to fathom the depths of such dread. Abel was covered in sweat, his face blood red from the intense strain. Yet amongst the cataclysmic chaos of his suffering, for only a moment, an instant of insurmountable willpower, he reduced his scream and was able to get out one pained phrase. Lean into it. It was probably in that moment that the Overseer found not what he came looking for, but what was undoubtedly the most precious secret in Abel's mind. It turned from his motionless stance and looked towards me, its face indecipherable for all except shock. It took its hand off of his face, cautious and slow, and tilted its head as it started to figure out just what was happening. I was in agony, the swamp of psionic forces having the effect of explosions inches away from my eardrums. I looked away and tightened my eyes further, desperate to escape the pain, but in the darkness of my own eyes I found Abel's commanding voice. Lean into it. I was confused and horribly scared, but his voice, it carried me. It carried me past my own insecurities for just one moment, and it produced enough bravery in my heart to dare to stand the pain. I did as told, and with each passing wave of power, I chose not to run, but to stand before it. In that moment, something inside of me snapped open. Amongst the infinite pain and heartless power of the Overseer's psionic presence, a sea shattered open and formed into something new. It was instant, a wave of incredible alien feelings washing over every inch of my skin. Knowledge and understanding rushed forth from recesses of my brain so deep that I thought them only darkness. Then it all stopped. No waves of pain, no screams from Abel, nothing. Just bliss. I opened my eyes, aware that they now glowed, and slowly I stood up from the dusty ground. I no longer needed to decipher the Overseer's mutated face, for I knew exactly what it did. I was humanity's first wielder of psionic power. How? The creature asked. Truth slowly unfolded before my subconscious, like melodic progressions in universal tunes. Humans might not evolve as fast as you. The horrid dogs had already run away in fear. But we are unrivaled in one aspect. Abel turned around and dug his spear into the thin torso of the distracted Overseer, causing it to writhe and fall onto its hands. I walked over, fully transparent to myself, and wholly aware of my new abilities. I raised my hand up, just as it did before, and I examined it like it was a new knife. We adapt. I placed my palm atop its eye-filled skull, and I began humanity's journey at reclaiming freedom, one alien scream at a time.